Help me, Anthony! Help me! I'm on fire! I'm on fire!
Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Courtney Barnett album. Sometimes I sit and think, and sometimes I just sit. Courtney Barnett, Melbourne-based singer-songwriter, and currently the pride of the Australian underground music scene. She has captured the hearts of local music fans and has caught the ear of Western audiences as well. It's not too hard to see why. She has kind of developed her style over the course of a series of well-received EPs and singles, all of which have kind of built up to this final product over here, this album, which features a coy and kind of funny album title, as well as some album art that is kind of rough around the edges and has a bit of an amateurish charm. And the music itself on this record delivers on those traits as well. Instrumentally on this new LP here, you will find some kind of dirty indie garage rock drums and guitars. You won't hear the kind of dirt or grit that you might find on a Black Lips record or a J Retard record, not even an album from fellow Aussie garage rockers like King Gizzard, The Drones, or Eddie Current Suppression Ring. You could liken the rock aesthetic of this album to like distressed clothing that you might find at a downtown clothing boutique, something that reads as old but is secretly new, which is evidenced in just how the music on this record is performed, how it's played. Much of the time, these tracks, sonically, musically, are pretty straightforward, on tempo, and pretty well put together. Courtney's band doesn't really play it as fast and as loose as they might like you to believe. Even the big single off of this thing, Pedestrian at Best, which features these really big, grungy guitar riffs, is kind of tame even by grunge standards. And the writing on this LP is kind of okay. A lot of the time it feels sort of borrowed from much older ideas on vintage rock albums. Just check out the guitar riff at the intro to the song Nobody Really Cares, or again, Pedestrian at Best. Da-na, da-na, da-na. Or even the keyboard-led introduction to the song Debbie Downer, which kind of gets me thinking, hey, watch that keyboard part. It's an antique. I do give props to this album for having all of the songs instrumentally flow into one another, but I can't really obsess over how good or not good the instrumentation on this album is, because all in all, it's pretty secondary. Not only in that it doesn't stir up much of an emotional response from me, but this album really is much more about Courtney Barnett and her vocals and her lyrics specifically. Courtney on this record sort of fashions herself as a neo-rock poet. The rock instrumentation on this LP will often just very steadily repeat in the background as Courtney, on top of the instrumentation, will deliver these rapid-fire diatribes on really any fleeting thought that seems to float to the top of her head. And while she does this, her voice isn't quite monotone, but it's definitely sort of unenthused, or at least drained. And over the years, I've loved a lot of very wordy rock or folk music, from people like Woody Guthrie and Phil Ochs to Lou Reed, Adam Green of the Moldy Peaches, as well as that new Sun Kil Moon record as well. And you know what? Let's just even throw in Sheryl Crow's All I Want to Do, which I think this album has an incredible amount of musical and lyrical common ground with. Maybe more than some fans would like to admit. I don't really mind the formula that Courtney is working with on this LP. It's just that what she actually says in these songs, the experiences and the feelings that she is detailing in her lyrics, are often just so general that they are uninteresting. Sure, there are lyrical moments on this album that are relatable, but only in the sense that much of the Western music listening audience has had coffee, has had a crush, has hated going to work, and maybe has pontificated whether or not the organic fruits and vegetables at the grocery store are worth the extra couple of dollars. Some people might find solace in hearing the incredibly mundane details of their own lives posted up onto this musical billboard as if they're worth writing on anything else other than a to-do list or maybe a Twitter timeline. And maybe given the right voice or personality, they are things that are worth sharing. But personally, I don't really find Courtney Barnett to be that riveting of a voice. I find her observations on this album a lot of the time to be kind of plain and dull. And it gets to the point where instrumentally and vocally, I find these songs hard to bear, like tracks such as Small Poppies or the closing track on here. Occasionally, though, Courtney does come through with some great lyrics. There are flashes in the pan. There are spots here where I think, okay, you know, I could see why people are really drawn to this LP because this is a legitimately good moment. Tracks like Pedestrian, I think Courtney sort of challenges her audience. If they put her on a pedestal, she'll only disappoint them. And then taking it a step further and saying any money that she is handed will immediately be turned into origami. It's moments like this where I think Courtney handles fame, depression, and boredom, ennui, listlessness in a really interesting and creative way. As well as on the song Kim's Caravan, where not only is Courtney incredibly depressed about the environmental state of the world and people having different points of view, which I guess keep things from getting fixed, but she also kind of talks directly to her audience, saying that she is essentially a mirror, a reflection of whatever the audience wants to hear or see, and that they shouldn't really ask her what she means when she's talking about all these different things that essentially are kind of mental clutter that some listeners might be reading a little bit too deep into. Like, Courtney, you're saying so many things. What does it all mean? I thought it was smart for Courtney toward the end of this LP to kind of very pointedly deflate any hope of there being any kind of big answers to any life questions in this album. Life questions that I think a lot of people might sort of assume are being answered, given that Courtney may suffer from a lot of the same emotional issues and neuroses that, you know, your average introspective music fan might as well. She seems to already know how some people might be enjoying or reading into an album like this, and she addresses that in a really awesome way. And there are some other tracks on here such as Aqua Profunda, where she's talking about crushing on someone at the community pool, which I thought was actually a really cute song. The song Nobody Really Cares If You Don't Go to the Party is a hilarious homebody anthem, maybe the best homebody anthem since R. Stevie Moore's I Like to Stay at Home. And the hook to Debbie Downer was pretty sweet as well, but outside of these cuts, there aren't really that many highlights for me on this LP. Overall, I'm not really into a lot of the instrumentation on this LP. I find a lot of it to be kind of copy and paste and just a little drab. And as far as Courtney goes with her lyrics, her vocals, there are a lot of spots here where I find her to be witty, but there are just as many moments where I think she's kind of mundane and uninteresting. And while she may be really self-aware about that, it doesn't necessarily make it any more entertaining for me. I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this LP. Transition. If you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Courtney Barnett, forever.